Hello my beloved glue sniffers. In the previous video we have reviewed Takom's 1/72nd scale Object 279 kit. It's a set of two kits, but let's call it kit. Now it's time to take it on our workbench and start building it. So stay with me. So this is the instruction, which, as I mentioned, it's not very informative and helpful, so we will not need this anymore. I hope so, or I'm wrong. So I started with suspension and cutting off all wheels, drive sprocket, return rollers and idler wheels, which there are a lot of them because it's a quadruple suspension. Suspension arms have very ugly injection pin marks, which need to be removed if we want to mount it in the upper position. To do this, we have to get rid of it with our scalpel and melt its remainings with quick-time cement. As well, we have to put some putty into suspension halves because it looks very ugly with this huge seam. It's not any rocket science, but this part could have been designed better. As I mentioned, we have assembled suspension in upper or on a lower position because this thing in real life had a pneumatic suspension which could be adjusted. To choose one of these options, we have to decide which pins to use, which is very simple, but unfortunately we can't change our decision because we fixed these parts with glue. Okay, I wouldn't expect from this little kit having moving suspension, but who knows, maybe in 20 years having this kind of solution in scale models will be something normal and obvious, which scale modelers demand from kit makers. To keep suspension arms in correct alignment, I used a very highly advanced tool. In this case, it was a nail file. What? It's helpful. Don't judge me. Then I could glue all wheels in correct positions. Unfortunately, these tabs are very fragile and very small, and I'm afraid that assembling tracks on this, it will be very difficult, but let's not to spread some negative waves. All parts go together very well, and actually you were on spoiler alert. I wasn't forced to use putty during the assembly process, so definitely Takom did a good job with this model. Now I decided to replicate some texture on a turret using white Tamiya putty diluted with extra thin cement, which was wrapped on the surface with an old brush with a very short bristle. Despite of terrible smell of this mixture, I think it's a very nice step to do this building armored model, especially these elder ones, because it makes your models more realistic and less uniform. Overall, I put 3 layers of this mixture on the turret. Then it started to look like in a real tank with very interesting textures. I decided to put this mixture also on the hull in some places, but looking at some photos of this model in Kubinka Museum, I could do this in more places because it's not flat, it's not polished. It looks, very in Soviet armor style. Now I decided to replicate some welds on a turret, which are partly visible on prototypes. To do this, I used Tamiya epoxy putty that comes with two components, which we have to mix together and roll it into a sausage. Then this thing is very easy to use and allows us to make various shapes. I put some welds especially around gun mantlet and upper turret structure. Then using a scalpel I replicated some flame cuts. If you think that they are overdone for this scale, then you may be right. But I wanted to prepare one of prototypes during some trials, so it's common that prototypes, they are not top of the work, and they are just to evaluate some solutions to see how some components behave. Or they go together. So prototypes, they are not polished as production ones. To make the epoxy putty edges softer, we can use tap water. This thing doesn't melt with tap water, but allows us to make it softer and to give it the shape we want to achieve. Then I glued some parts to the hull. Everything goes together very well. No surprises, but some parts required cleaning from injection pin marks and some molding remains. And it may take some time, but once we do this, then everything goes together very well. No problems at all. As you see, some parts are tiny, some of them are about 1 millimeter. So our carpet monster will be very happy once we feed him with these parts. It's very easy to lose them. So definitely a clean workbench. It's something that we must have building this model, because losing these parts will be very problematic. Once I finished with the hull, I glued together some turret details. Now it was time to clean the gun barrel. The first stage was sanding it with a sanding paper 600. And then as the second stage, I melt some remainings of the seam line with extra thin cement, and the effect was quite satisfying. No advanced surgery was required and the gun barrel was clean. Unfortunately, it wasn't aligned well. the connecting tab had to be removed. Then I had to polish it a little bit and then carefully glue together, taking care of the alignment and using straight edge as a guide for this. A little bit of patience and correcting the alignment, and the part was glued together in a correct position. The tow cable from copper wire is a nice touch. We can glue this together using super glue, and it looks very well, better than molded on the hull. Photo etched elements may be quite problematic to put it on the model because connection points, they are very thin and they are about tenths of millimeters. So we have to be very careful to not to make our model dirty with some CA glue remainings. I drilled a hole to a machine gun barrel. To remove some remainings of CA glue, I used Vamos debonder. It's not the top of debonders, but it does its job, but it had to be removed once I put it on the surface because it doesn't evaporate. And if we leave this thing for too much time, it may debond a whole part from the plastic. In the end, I took the hammer, which was attached to the model, and fixed any remaining parts together. Okay, it's a joke. Now the least pleasant thing during the building process, I mean tracks. At the first stage, I had to try to remove remaining of injection pin marks from its internal side because they were large, ugly, and they could worsen the final effect. And what's worse, they could stand on our way to put tracks on the model. It was very difficult to remove it with a sanding paper, but I did my best to do this. Once I finished with the sanding paper, I took an extra thin cement from Tamiya and put a generous amount of this thing on tracks to melt remainings of injection pin marks, and it had done its job. Not properly because some very minimal remainings are left on tracks, but they are definitely less visible. Connecting tracks together was a nightmare because connecting points, they were very fragile and tracks didn't want to cooperate with me, breaking in many parts. In the end, I gave the model the final coat of Tamiya primer and prepared it for painting. And this is it. It's all for today's episode. The model is assembled, ready to paint. Thank you for watching, my friends. If you are curious what's going to be in upcoming episodes, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon next to the subscription button to be alerted once I upload the next episode, and be ready for painting with this. I'm very curious about the final effect with painting, because I'm going to paint this 3-tone camo skin on this tiny model. So thank you for watching, stay safe, have a great time with modeling, and see you soon. Bye bye.